Good afternoon and welcome to the joint general session of the ISO Board of Governors and the WEIM governing body. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are currently muted until the public comment portion of today's call. We will give you all instructions on how to enter the comment queue at that time. With that, I'll now go ahead and turn the call over to Roger Collington with the California ISO. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Roger Collington, Corporate Secretary, and let's start out with our roll call. And we'll just go through each of the board members and governing body members. Vice Chair Bornstein.
Here.
Member Campbell.
Here.
Member Decker.
Here.
Governor Edo.
Here.
Governor Galitova.
Here.
Chair Konzioka.
Here.
Governor Leslie.
Here.
Member Prescott.
Here.
Chair Shorey.
Here.
And Vice Chair Wagner.
Here.
Thank you, governing body and board members. Welcome. Happy to see you all here today. Let's turn to agenda item number 1, which starts out with our chair welcome. And I'll turn it to you, Chair Konzioka, to start that out.
Well, thank you. And good afternoon and welcome to everyone who is participating in today's joint meeting. One is certainly happy for those who are taking the time to monitor our activities and see the progress that gets made. I'd like to just state that with today's agenda, we have an opportunity to really set the tone for items and issues that may be coming before the joint governors and members over the next 6 to 18 months. And I think that, we'll be making good progress, and I certainly hope we do. And those who are interested in how we move things forward, take note. Comments are always appreciated. And for those of you who would like to make certain that you are heard, please make certain that you take the time to call in. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Chair Shorey.
Yes, thank you, Rob. And I want to second your comments. Welcome everyone to the meeting today. And I am enthusiastic about hearing an update on our roadmap and all the work that's being done on that. But I would like to turn it over to Severin to explain our colorful attire today.
Well, those of you who are regular participants know already that our colorful attire, light shirts, short sleeve shirts, some of which are Hawaiian. I didn't say all of them were. Are an attempt to model living in sync with nature. It's a hot time here in Folsom, and as many of you know, the last couple of weeks have been particularly challenging. We can get through those times by cranking the air conditioning, or we can change to what is also a much more comfortable way of living, and also turn the air conditioning up and save electricity. Now, of course, it's only about 1:30 here, and the grid is doing just great in the middle of the day. But many of us will still be here at 4 o'clock as we start to lose solar power, and the grid potentially gets more constrained, and we'll still be wearing these outfits. Now, some of us, I'm noticing, are feeling that the air conditioning is still a little on the aggressive side and are wearing coats over their Hawaiian shirts or light outfits, and that's fine. We're all adapting well. So that's the reason, and I'm proud of all of our board governing body and board of governors who are willing to go along with that and model that adjustment. Thanks.
Thank you, Severin.
Okay, back to me, I guess. And I'll just note that whenever we have an in-person meeting, it's always a hot time in Folsom. So with that, so the next item is our public comment. We do have one public comment in the room, and then we'll go to the phones for any public comment. It's Tiffany Emerson from Portland General Electric. Step on up if you dare.
Push the button too.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you that.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Tiffany Emerson with Portland General Electric, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide a public comment. PGE would like to thank the efforts of the California ISO as we stepped through the EDM implementation agreement process and were able to sign our EDAM implementation agreement last month. And we look forward to continued efforts of collaboration as we walk down that path of EDAM implementation for go live of fall 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Silas, are there any public comments on the line?
If you would like to make a public comment, you can press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if you are dialed into the phone only line, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the comment queue. There are no comments in the queue at this time.
Thank you, Silas. The next, did you want to comment? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to be able to officially thank Tiffany for the comments from PG.
Oh.
Really appreciate you being here today. And it's really, the feeling is reciprocal. Thank you so much. Portland's been such a great partner to work with, and we're super excited to have moved officially into the implementation phase of you. So thanks again, and please send my best to your entire team. Thank you on behalf of all of us.
Thank you, Elliot. Now we'll turn to agenda item number 2, which is our decision on the May 22nd, 2024 joint general session minutes, and move that the ISO Board of Governors and the WEIM governing body approve the joint general session minutes for the May 22nd, 2024 meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And Angelina, I believe that was an aye from you on the virtual.
Yes, I tried to be loud. Did you not hear me?
I just wanted to verify,
Okay.
just for the official record, of course. The next item on our agenda is agenda item number 3, and let me turn it to our CEO, Elliot Mainzer.
Thank you, Roger. Chair Kanzioka, Chair Shori, governing body members, Board of Governors. It's great to see you. I think after, Severn, I think it's been about 2 years of exhortation that not only have you been able to successfully get all of your colleagues in the governing entities to wear Hawaiian shirts, but you've got those of us at the CAISO today in full regalia as well. So I just wanted to comment that the Hawaiian shirt that I'm wearing today was developed in memory, actually, of a beloved member of the CAISO community, Dave Del Part, who really sadly passed away last year. Very too early, but he was a true legend in our control center, a longtime manager of the grid here at CAISO, left a huge legacy. And I know he would have been particularly proud of the work that the CAISO and our partners across California and the West performed these last couple of weeks during the heat wave. It was a fairly early event, a couple of weeks in duration, very intense, lots of records falling, both within California and across the Western United States, but just a case where I think, not only just the actual physical procurement and onboarding of a lot of new resources, close to 10,000 megawatts of batteries, but the soft side, the coordination and communication, both inside California and with our partners, all the other balancing authorities across the West. Just a great example of the West working together to leverage resource diversity, transmission connectivity, and let the EIM do its thing. And it really performed well. So I just wanted to thank everybody, honor Dave's memory. And I think we've also seen consumers starting to really systematically start to pay attention to their electricity consumption in the evenings. We're not asking anybody to do anything to really inconvenience themselves, but just those small adjustments that you can make in electrical consumption during those periods creates a little bit more margin for the system and just gives us a little bit more flexibility. So we appreciate that, and happy to wear the Hawaiian shirt today. So thanks again to all of you for all the support. Looking forward to an exciting little transition here today, according to the agenda, and looking forward to continued collaboration between these two entities. So thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing that I meant to say, that a statistic that really made an impression on me is that CAISO on a typical summer day has a peak load around 30 gigawatts, and on a really hot summer day has a peak load around 50 gigawatts. And that extra 20 gigawatts is basically air conditioning. So anything people can do to make even small adjustments is going to be a really substantial change in the load, and particularly in those last couple gigawatts when we're running into a tight market.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to keep.
Thank
moving.
you, Elliot. And we can now go to agenda item number 4, which is our decision on the WEIM governing body name change and proposed revisions to the corporate bylaws. And presenting that for us today is Stacy Crowley, our Vice President of External Affairs.
Good afternoon, Board of Governors and WEIM governing body. I'm pleased to bring you this item today. This is really as a result of your interest in reflecting the true nature of the joint authority that you now have following your decision in March to accept the governance changes for the an extended day ahead market. This item is really a reflection of the evolution of the shared scope authority that you now have over these market rules. So since the governance language has been changed, your current name of Western Energy Imbalance Market Governing Body does not reflect the scope of your current work. So with this item, we are suggesting that the name be changed to Western Energy Markets Governing Body. And this motion would be jointly approved by both bodies. And then a separate motion would be made just for the decision of the board as it pertains to changes in the bylaws of the company. So if approved, we would reflect the name change as soon as practicable, and it would be changed going forward in our governance documents, as well as other things such as our website and some templates that we use under that name. So we're excited to have this motion in front of you and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stacy. Any comments or questions from the board or the governing body? Okay,
Wait.
Member Decker.
I'm sorry.
So I'm gonna, in
I'm
some
using
ways,
virtual hands.
okay. I'm gonna some way reiterate the comments that Stacy just made. So if you look back to the initiation of the energy imbalance market, it was the energy imbalance market. And it was probably 2.5 years ago about that we started adding that Western in front of it. And then now with the addition of EDM, as Stacy just said, you know, it's gone beyond the imbalance market. And someone should be able to look at our name and say, we understand what you're responsible for and who you are. And I think this name change actually exemplifies what we're responsible for and what we're doing. So I really support this change and appreciate the work that staff did to bring some iterations to us and land here.
Thank you, Nita.
Any others?
Don, do you want to go? Member Prescott.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I guess just building on what Anita said, it's we're removing the word imbalance from our title. So I guess that means we're balanced, which, you know, from a checkbook point of view is probably a good thing.
Hey, I tell the jokes here.
Very good. But seriously, the name simplification represents a huge step in the expansion of Western electricity markets. I see the Western energy imbalance market was kind of a proof of concept that was wildly successful, yet it still respected the policies of all the states that participated. So it's a pretty phenomenal thing. So I look at this name change reflecting going into the EDAM market and seeing those benefits flow to the end user. Severin talked a little bit about air conditioning load. Well, this market is going to work to benefit the entire market, no matter what your load is on the system, as long as you're within the footprint of that market. So I fully support this name change and looking forward to expanding the market. End of report.
Thank you, John.
I'll comment now instead of later, and kind of building on what Member Prescott and Decker just stated. When looking at the history of the name, when it was initially being rolled out, and I'm talking to the people who rolled it out, so you know, you can correct me if I go astray here, is it was narrowly focused. It was not being sold. It was not being marketed as a do-all end-all. It was very, you know, intended to be limited. At that time frame, there were still concerns about energy markets. The West was still not ready to go full forward, and the energy imbalance market had that striking that right balance of saying this is a limited market, a limited opportunity, and this is what it's going to do on a limited basis. And as John just stated, proved to be successful. And I think when you look at the growth over the 10 years, it's nothing short of phenomenal. And it's now clearly made participants much more comfortable in being able to move forward into a day ahead market and to be able to broaden this out. And so, yeah, I think the name change is very positive, and I think it does a good job of describing what the responsibilities are. And I hope that everybody else embraces it and is appreciative that this describes more accurately the function and role of the governing body.
Thank you, Rob. Just giving anyone else a chance in the room before I go to public comment. Okay, with that, Silas, can you see if there's any public comment on the line?
If you would like to make a public comment, you can press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or #2 if you are dialed in through the phone only line. There are no comments in queue at this time.
Thank you, Silas. And there are no public comments in the room. Chair Kanzioka, before we go to a motion, did you have anything further from the governing body or from the board for that matter?
I believe all the governing body members have made the remarks that they would like to provide.
Excellent, thank you. So this is divided up into two separate motions, as Stacy mentioned. The first motion is for the governing body and the board as a joint motion, and that's to approve for your approval of the name change. And then we will do a bylaws motion, which technically would be done in a board-only general session, but for administrative efficiency, I have that motion here as well, and that will be just for the board vote. Let's start with the first one. Move that the Board of Governors and WEIM governing body change the name of the Western Energy Imbalance Market governing body to the Western Energy Markets governing body, effective immediately. And move that the ISO Board of Governors and the WEIM governing body direct management to implement this change in all internal governance-related documents, as well as external-facing documents as soon as practicable. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, WEM governing body members, and thank you, board. Motion is approved.
Yeah.
Congratulations on a cool name.
And as Jim Croce said, I've got a name. So the next motion, which is very important because this now implements this into our corporate bylaws, is for the board. And move that the ISO Board of Governors approves the proposed revisions to the corporate bylaws as discussed in and attached in the memorandum dated July 10, 2024. From the board, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Jan first and Joe second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you, governors. That motion passes. And we will now proceed with the new bylaws, and we will cascade those down into other related governance documents as the prior motion indicated. That takes us to agenda item number 5, which is our briefing on policy initiatives, catalog, and roadmap. And introducing the topic is Anna McKenna, Vice President, Market Design and Analysis.
Thank you, Roger. Good afternoon, Chair Shorey and Chair Kanzioka, WEM governing body members, and Board of Governors. It is a pleasure for me today to be introducing this topic, not only because I think this has been a very innovative way of changing our policy roadmap initiatives, and but also because I have the pleasure of introducing Amelia Blanke, who is our principal economist and director of market strategy and governance here at the ISO, and she has personally moved the ball quite a bit on our roadmap process, and so she's going to share all that with you. I want to give a special shout out to her, as well as Alyssa Craig Arnold, who actually have done an extraordinary amount of work on this, both ISO staff members as well as our customer affairs team. And also I want to give a special shout out to the stakeholders who've actually taken a lot of time to participate in this process and given us a lot of input, which Amelia will share with you. And in particular, the Regional Issues Forum, who's actually participated quite extensively as well up until, well, it's not done, but they've done a lot of work in this first part of the year to really provide us some critical input. So with that, I will ask Amelia to walk us through our policy initiatives roadmap as a mid-year briefing for you all.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you, Chair Shorey, Chair Kanzioka, members of the CAISO Board of Governors, and members of the Western Energy Markets Governing Body. Anna stole my first 5 minutes of thank yous, which are overdue, but as she mentioned, the biggest thank you really goes to the stakeholders who gave this new process a chance, participating in it with their time, energy, and their creativity. And if I could get the next slide. This is an existing function, but a new process. And the goals in setting up this new process were to meaningfully engage external stakeholders, to be transparent, and to allow the stakeholder prioritization, what stakeholders would like us to do, to be considered in the ISO's internal planning processes. We also had a goal of incorporating urgent requests, and I'll spend a minute on that. How would an annual process like this one possibly accommodate urgent requests? There's a serendipity in the timing that allows us to take in these requests. And an example would be the most common submittal in our process this year was the request for the ability to bid above the soft offer cap, which, as all of you know, was taken up by the ISO in a stakeholder process and brought before you for approval earlier this year and is now under consideration at FERC. And that's an example of how this annual process can really accommodate, to some degree, some of the urgent requests that we see in a timely fashion. Next slide. We have, as Anna mentioned, really relied on stakeholders. For the first part of this process, we started in January. Stakeholders, following some level setting workshops, proposed initiatives to the ISO. We had submittals from 32 separate stakeholders who submitted a total of 132 different ideas. Following that, there was a Regional Issues Forum roundtable. There were then presentations by the sponsors of those initiatives. There was some consolidation and refinement of the proposals along the way. And finally, we opened up the final set of discretionary initiatives for stakeholder prioritization. And that window just closed. We are hoping to publish the final prioritized list of discretionary initiatives, either, I believe, on Thursday, either tomorrow or Thursday. Next slide. I want to call out particularly the contribution from the Regional Issues Forum. That's, as all of you know, an all-volunteer organization. It's one of our largest organized groups of stakeholders. The Regional Issues Forum, by sector, organized the various perspectives and requests and consolidated them into a single report, which I've linked below. We're very grateful for their help, both in soliciting those ideas and in helping their sectors prioritize their requests within each sector. Next slide. As I mentioned, we did get 132 plus additional suggestions that came through the RIF directly. And what we did is split these into 4 categories. There were 31 that ended up on our list of discretionary initiatives. These are candidates for the catalog. There were a number that were non-discretionary. These are suggestions for things that the ISO must do. including, for example, complying with federal and state law. There were a number, and this is the largest, this is the majority, of issues that are already being addressed in either a current initiative or a working group. And finally, there were process improvements. These were suggestions for changes that didn't rise to the level of a discretionary initiative, didn't require a change to the tariff, but a suggestion for an improvement in an ISO process. We are evaluating all of the suggestions and will determine whether or not the ISO will take action on those and how to prioritize them relative to the other things the ISO has on its plate. The ISO will respond to all suggestions. The survey, which, as I mentioned, just closed at the end of June, gave stakeholders the opportunity to rank each category of discretionary initiative and then each of the 31 separate potential discretionary initiatives. We allowed one category to be ranked as top priority and 2 initiatives. Everything else could be ranked as support, neutral, or opposed. We received 100 and this from memory, I think we received 117 responses from 117 organizations, 70 of which were new to participation in ISO stakeholder processes at all, and 47 of which were stakeholders that are familiar with the CAISO stakeholder process. In response to a question I got earlier about this publication and how we'll publish, this is not an anonymous survey. We will not be publishing summarized numbers of support votes. We will be publishing those responses by organization name. Next. And finally, our next steps for this process, the stakeholder prioritization will be considered in the ISO's internal planning processes. We'll consider whether or not each of these now 29, as we've already taken action on 2. So each of these 29 is aligned with ISO's strategic goals and existing planning. We'll assess whether or not this project would have a positive impact on market efficiency and system reliability. And then the ISO will, in its internal process, consider the implementation cost and the relative priority relative to the other commitments that the ISO has made. The draft policy roadmap will be published in September, and the final policy roadmap will be published in December and brought back to the joint session of the Western Energy Market governing body. This was drafted before the name change, and the ISO Board of Governors. And with that, I will stop for questions.
Any questions or comments from the board or the governing body? Joe, I see you have your hand up.
I have a question. When you publish the policy roadmap, will it include a discussion of how you use the input that you received to conform your final recommendations for what initiatives you're going to be pursuing? How you trade off market efficiency versus system reliability or implementation cost, or the factors that you're considering in looking at those proposed recommendations?
I'll hand that question off to Anna.
I think one of the things we try to do is always reflect why we conclude, what we conclude. We've had a lot of feedback over the years that sometimes the decisions on the roadmap have not been sufficiently transparent. But we will try to provide our thinking on all of these decisions. I will caution, however, that it's not necessarily the case that we'll have an opportunity to do extensive analysis. So it will be a response based on what we know. That said, we'll have an opportunity for folks to come back and comment on what we, as Amelia noted, it's a draft roadmap that gets posted first. And we will provide as much detail as we can in our thinking. And it's also not the case that this is the end all of all games, because as you know, every year we do this, and it's sometimes we think it may not make it through the criteria this year. It doesn't mean that in the future it may not. So we definitely will continue to provide opportunity for reconsideration. But our goal is to provide feedback on our thinking and as much as we can on all the items.
Thank you.
Anita?
So Amelia, thank you. Great presentation. And thank you for acknowledging the amount of work that went into the stakeholder side of this. I think there's a huge piece of acknowledging the work that the ISO also contributed to doing this and being open to doing it a little bit differently. So, applaud that. My question is there are a few things that continue to pop up in DMM? And where will we get a sense that some of the DMM issues are in some of these priorities? Is there a way for us to kind of know that? And I'll use, CRRs would be an example. There's a couple other things that here and there that have been in their annual and their quarterly report. So if you could maybe spend a moment there.
I'd be happy to. The Department of Market Monitoring, DMM, did submit several ideas into the discretionary initiatives catalog. So of those 132, I believe they had 5. They did not participate in the prioritization of the final ranked initiative priorities, but they were able to present the candidates for the catalog. And one of those candidates was a suggestion from the Department of Market Monitoring on CRRs. It's a good example of the way the process worked this year. They were able to present their proposal and then take questions from the CRR interested community that was on that call and have a discussion with the same stakeholders who were listening to other proposals around CRRs. There were also proposals from the Department of Water Resources around the allocation of CRRs, as well as a proposal from the Western Power Trading Forum around changing some of the CRR market design.
Andy?
Thank you, Amelia. This presentation, I really appreciate the stakeholder involvement throughout and in the future. I was looking at the timeline 2024. That got me thinking, like, what about 2025? So once there is a final policy roadmap that's been published, you get into 25. You did mention at one point that the ISO would be responsive to urgent needs. And so sometimes things may kind of be worked on or prioritized that were not in that plan. So I'm wondering kind of what sort of communication, also remember some stakeholders want both the urgent things to be addressed and they want to understand what the implications of the urgent thing being addressed are on the other priorities. So I was curious what thoughts you have about how you'll communicate during 2025 when sort of changes happen in real time and how that sort of impacts different parts of the roadmap.
Thank you for the question. And Anna, please add on to this. We are planning to use our experience with this process this year and repeat it in a fairly similar fashion for next year. This was a new process. And one of the things that we learned in this process is that quite a few of our stakeholders would like more time. I'll particularly call out the Regional Issues Forum, had a very heavy lift. And so one of the changes we're making this year is to work with those stakeholders at the end of this year to begin to gather some of that input data to allow them to have a report that's available in April of next year. But we're very open to other suggestions for making this process easier, particularly for the stakeholders who do the bulk of the work in the beginning.
I was going to add a couple of things. First, as Amelia noted, I want to emphasize, we'll just say it. This is out of the road, not in the roadmap, something that came up in X forum. I will explain why we're picking it up, just like we did with the bid cap issue this year. So that's something we just want to practice on an ongoing basis. And it's not necessarily new, but we want to be more conscious of that because I think it's important that folks understand why we're elevating certain issues. The other thing I wanted to note is that we have continuing stakeholder initiatives. And one of the things that became apparent in this process, for example, is that a lot of stuff that people brought up were things that are already either being considered in stakeholder processes, and that could ferment new issues that are going to be outside of what we prioritized the year before. And so we need to be conscious of that. And so we'll try to provide a mapping towards, okay, this came out of the price formation initiative. We've been talking about these things for 3 weeks now. It looks like folks are really concerned about this, and we take it up and accelerate it, but do so in a transparent manner for everybody. So those are a couple of things that, how we'll highlight why we sometimes will go outside of the roadmap in order to address things that are coming up and try to be disciplined in that communication.
Thank you.
And Roger, I have a question too. So Amelia, good afternoon, and thank you for presenting this information. I really appreciate the overview you have provided. And I have a comment and a question much along the lines of Member Decker and Governor Edo. One is, congratulations to you and the entire team and the stakeholders in going through this process. I think it's terrific to see this increased focus on the participants. I think it's helpful. I think it'll be more robust. I think you'll get a lot of quality input, which you seem to have already received.
Yeah.
And I particularly like the note you had at the bottom of slide 5, which stated ISO will respond to all submissions. I think that's important. If you want to ensure that those who participate believe they are being heard and they understand what is being asked and how they're being treated, they're going to know. And I think that will make for better and more informed stakeholders. And so kind of along that same line, I was going to ask, and I know you don't have this, I'm not asking for specifics. I think it would be very hard to say one top category and just 2 individual initiatives of all the items that you have. But based upon that and based upon what you received, did you see any type of focused response coming back, or was it spread pretty evenly throughout? In other words, there was so much variation that everybody saw things a little bit differently, or did you see some things that were kind of rising towards the top that had some type of statistical significance to it?
Thanks first for the note, and also for the question. I'll take the question first and get back to the first thing second. In answer to your question, by pure numbers, if we just counted responses, by far the most popular category was demand response. This is in part because most of the 70 new respondents were from the demand response community, because one of the sponsors of those initiatives had done a lot of work to publicize this in the community. And I think that highlights why we need to be specific about calling out where the support for something comes from. To get to the question about responding to all suggestions, and thank you for bringing that up. We will not only respond to all suggestions, but we're doing so publicly in the published catalog. And I think that's important. And I think that it will really help incentivize people to participate in this public process, rather than using some of the more casual or personal ways that stakeholders have been accustomed to contacting the ISO and making requests.
Amelia,
Thank you.
I agree with you, and kudos to you and the team. I know it will not be easy. I know it will be a lot of work, but I concur that you'll probably see a lot of dividends from that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Any other comments or questions for Amelia? We don't see any in the room. Silas, can you check and see if there's any public comment?
If you would like to make a public comment, you can press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or #2 on the phone only line. At this time, there are no comments in the queue.
Thank you. With that, we can conclude this item. And our next agenda item is the informational reports, which have been provided to the board and the governing body. Again, for your information, but we open this up if you have any questions or comments you'd like to make about those reports in the public meeting. Seeing none. Going once, going twice, we can then adjourn the meeting. So our next meeting is our Board of Governors meeting, which is scheduled for 2:30. So that's about 15 minutes from now. And folks, I believe, can stay on the line if they want to stay on the line for the Board of Governors General Session meeting. And otherwise, we will see you in about 15 minutes.
Thank you, everybody.